Get right to the site. Welcoming the host of the Late Kick, Josh Pate, and Big Game, Dennis Dodd, who join us from the Orange Bowl in Miami. Josh, what's your reaction to Georgia absolutely dominating this game?
It kind of quiets a lot of that SEC bowl record talk. It was a lot of anecdotal bits and pieces of fodder being thrown around going into this. But really, Dennis, it turns out that the SEC championship did in fact feature the two best teams in the country. We're going to see a rematch in 9 or so odd short days in Indianapolis. Look, you just said it, Hakeem, and that's a very interesting stat. No team's ever started a playoff game scoring on the first 5 drives. And you and I sat here all week and we talked about how imperative it would be for the psyche of Georgia to get off to a fast start so that you don't have a lot of those ghosts of SEC championships past, if you would, kind of creep back into the mentality. Well, that was never an issue because they score and then they turn Michigan over and then they score again. And it's kind of like the Alabama-Cincinnati game earlier today, Dennis. As it turns out, first couple of drives, all we needed to know.
It's the SEC's world and we're only living in it. Because of that late touchdown, we narrowly avoided the first 2 semifinals, each with the losers being without a touchdown. This game changed on about the first series when Michigan forgot to cover Brock Bowers, the best Georgia receiver, and then made kind of a questionable decision to go for it on their own 41. I can make a choice, either way doing that, but when it didn't happen, you felt the game flip right away. And then Georgia and Todd Monken took it to the house with Kenny McIntosh as the tailback throwing the touchdown pass to Mitchell. First time in 15 years a Georgia running back had thrown a touchdown. It looked like a special night, and all of a sudden 14-0 looked like 50-0 because that defense could then dictate. You saw the 4 sacks, you saw the 2 interceptions, and in the second half, J.J. McCarthy was tuning up for next season.
Right.
I mean, that's what I saw. So, meet the new dogs, same as the old dogs, and we got a rematch for the 3rd time in 10 years. All 3 with Alabama, 2 with Georgia, and for the 2nd time in 37 days, they're going to meet.
I got to say also, Hakeem, excellent Wi-Fi here at Hard Rock. So I'm scrolling through Twitter as the game's going on, and I was looking for one thing, Dennis. I was looking for JT Daniels talk, and there was none to be found.
Oh, no.
Shockingly, there was none to be found once the actual game got underway.
Yeah, it was, I said in my story that I'm writing right now, Stetson Bennett stiff-armed the JT Daniels fan club, as well as Michigan at the same time. He was amazing. 307 yards passing, 3 more touchdowns, 10 touchdowns in his last 3 games. Yep. I know Alabama wasn't great, but he did have 3 touchdowns in this game, and you can see, there's a story to be written this week, how they have let him go,
sure,
for lack of a better term. And it's happened throughout the season. It wasn't tonight or last week or this month. They've let him do more as the season gone down. He had completions today of 35, 39, 53, and 57. He's a mad bomber all of a sudden, Stetson Bennett.
Josh, what did you learn about Stetson Bennett? Because we saw him in the SEC title game, threw a pick 6, threw 3 touchdowns, the 2 interceptions. I think some people wanted to blame him for the loss to Alabama. I would say that's not really fair. Look, he wasn't perfect, but he wasn't terrible either. He certainly made a statement on this night against Michigan.
Well, some of the criticism, I'm going to use one of those sharp journalistic terms here, some of the criticism was stupid. And it was stupid because, I'll get the spelling later, it was ignoring the reality of the entire football game against Alabama. So we come into this game, and as we talked about in pregame, if you don't average more than 3.6 yards per carry, won't really matter what Stetson Bennett does. Well, Georgia's up around 5.5 yards per carry this afternoon. You saw him commit to the run game right from the opening drive, and all of a sudden we get into what was a familiar stance for Stetson Bennett for the regular season, Dennis, and that was when he needed to throw, it wasn't really need at all. It was throwing out of luxury instead of having to throw out of necessity. Stetson Bennett is not Bryce Young. He doesn't have to be for Georgia to win football games if they play a complementary game. The way we saw today, they're fully capable of playing. And now we get to look towards Indianapolis and ask, okay, can you duplicate it?
I think they can. I mean, look, we're in a position now where Georgia's favored to win the national championship without JT Daniels or George Pickens being a factor.
Right.
And not only can I think it can happen, I think it will happen. If Georgia's going to win that game, those two aren't going to play a big role. I think we all understand that now. So Stetson Bennett is the guy. Yeah, he was mediocre against Alabama, but you said it best. They threw out of luxury. They didn't throw because they had to. They threw over a defense that thought it could stop or slow down Georgia or affect Stetson Bennett. Instead, that Georgia defense flexed, and as what's usually happened this season, the opponent recoiled.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. They didn't even get a chance to really establish Hassan Haskins. They tried a couple times. He had a run there in the second half that looked pretty good. But once they got behind, it was Cade McNamara's game to win, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
Dennis, how disappointed are you in Michigan that it didn't make it competitive? And one of the plays that comes to mind, and there's several, 4th and goal, 7 minutes to play, 34-3, they're down. We get a swing pass behind the line of scrimmage. Look, we're watching this game, we're saying, what are we doing? This is not the Michigan team we saw.
I mean, look, there wasn't much downfield. You saw early on, even before that, they were throwing a lot of swing passes, a lot of jailbreak stuff. That's just raw meat for Georgia's speed and that defense. Look, Michigan had achieved its goals this year. They won't say it. They beat Ohio State. They won the Big Ten. This is still Georgia's base camp. They got 14,000 feet to go to Mount Everest. And it's been 40 years, and it's been 8 straight losses to Alabama, the longest streak in the history of that rivalry that goes back to 1895. We talked about that before the game, and they want it bad. And can they get it? We'll see, but that's what adds the juice to this game. If the rest of the country is turned off by another rematch, I think they ought to get excited about Georgia.
Yeah, and before we kind of fully turn our attention to that, you asked about Michigan, Hakeem. I don't know if the cameras caught it on the national feed, but as Georgia was celebrating this Orange Bowl win and the confetti was raining down, there were several Michigan players, all of them coming back next year, that stood out on this field. It was J.J. McCarthy, it was Blake Corum, it was Andrell Anthony. They stood out here and they just soaked it in. We've seen it before in championship settings, but I just thought it was really noteworthy because you got guys whose careers aren't setting in the sun. You know, you've really got a new day that's dawning for Michigan football, even with the loss here tonight. It's the best year they've had under Jim Harbaugh. We were listening to some of the sound before we came on from their presser, and they're already talking about 2022. So if you properly contextualize this, absent not being able to play with Georgia today, there's a lot to build on for Michigan here.
Yeah, a lot to be proud of there in Ann Arbor, with wins over Ohio State and then Iowa in the Big Ten title game, but they come up short because at the end of the day, look, it's about winning national championships, and now Georgia has a chance to do so, looking to win its first national championship since 1980.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.